Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN provides over 5,000 super-fast servers across 60 different countries to help you to hide your IP, location and internet activity, whether you're at home or in a public place like a coffee shop or airport. Simply click on the country you'd like to connect to. There are also a range of specialised servers for peer-to-peer, there's a dedicated IP option, and double VPN for when you want to be one step closer to being behind 7 proxies. There's also a kill switch option if you wanted to cut off your internet should the VPN stop for whatever reason. NordVPN also works in China and with Netflix. You can have up to 6 simultaneous connections at once, and it comes with 24-hour customer support. NordVPN stores no data logs. At the moment they're 70% off, making it just $3.49 a month, plus you get an additional free month by using the link in the video's description. Imagine we could do anything to Counter-Strike's graphics that we wanted. Forget about Source 1's limitations. Forget that the game is unlikely to be fully ported across to Source 2 anytime soon. Forget for a moment that even Source 2 will have its limitations. What could CSGO benefit from? First of all, I'll cover what I don't think should be added. The first of these is Raytracing. Don't get me wrong, it's a cool technology. Imagine being able to see enemies creeping up behind you in your AWP scope. Imagine using a shiny pole to spot an enemy from around a corner. Imagine CSGO actually looking as good as real life. Awesome. But there are many reasons for why this shouldn't be added. For a start, it will be years before most PCs will be able to run it, and even then, is it worth the frame rate drop? Everybody wants high frame rates in CSGO. I can't think of a more demanding graphics option to add than ray tracing. For those reasons alone, it shouldn't be added. Another cool thing I can think of would be destruction. It used to be a big thing in games 10 years ago, and I feel it's coming back into fashion again now. And rightly so. Imagine hiding behind a crate only for bits of it to be shot out, or for footprints to be left behind in the sand. You could have custom shoe treads. I hope you're making notes, Valve. Or how about being able to bore a hole through a wall to get a sneaky sightline into a bomb site? Or shooting a wall to deny the other team a setup grenade bounce they've been using? Destruction has more potential to change CSGO's gameplay than ray tracing does. But for both of these things, whilst they might be cool, I don't know if they'd fit CSGO's vision. Yes, they'd change the gameplay, they'd add some new possibilities, but you've got to look at what would be left behind. And you'd be saying goodbye to an already balanced, polished game that has an ultra-competitive community who I don't think would welcome changes like these, even if they did seem cool at first. If Valve ever considered these features, they'd be big enough changes to warrant a brand new game and title. Good news for those who want destruction, there's already a competitive game with that sort of stuff, Rainbow Six Siege. It's proof that it could work in a competitive game, but in that game it's the focus of the gameplay. Adding it to CSGO would change the gameplay so much that it wouldn't be CSGO anymore. And that's why I don't think CSGO should get destruction. They've even tried it already. Counter-Strike Source introduced physics and breakable items, some of which could even influence the gameplay, like being able to hide a planted bomb under a barrel, or to block a corridor with a barrel, or to jump inside a prop to hide out of view, or even just to shoot a hole in the wall of Inferno's apartment, right here. And tossing a grenade into this room would freeze everybody's PCs for a split second, buying you the element of surprise. If these things sounded gimmicky, that's because they were, and they perhaps weren't what Valve was hoping to achieve by adding interactive items into Counter-Strike. So they have since toned that back again, returning more to how it was before. With those exciting things covered and dismissed, it's on to the main bit of the video. And while these upcoming suggestions might not be as cool as destructible environments, I believe they would complement CSGO's gameplay a hell of a lot better. Starting with DirectX 12 or Vulkan. Typing mat_config current into the console shows that CSGO is still using DirectX 95? Nah, that's DirectX 9 and a bit. The beauty of newer APIs such as DirectX 12 and Vulkan is that they can allow for better performance. How? Well, I don't want to bore you with the details, also because I'm a bit unsure about them myself, but it means that games can better use your PC's hardware to its maximum potential. It can reduce CPU overhead, which is useful in CPU limited games such as CSGO. Just look at how Vulkan improved how these cards performed in Doom at 1080p. And we're in luck. Source 2 supports Vulkan, among others, and Dota 2 got support for it a few years ago. This is important because if Dota 2 can get a feature, then so can CSGO. I even found a fascinating 2.5 hour long talk about it. Now I'm sure you're already closing this video down to watch it all for yourself, but I'll summarise it here. They admit that Dota 2 isn't the ideal game to be running on Vulkan. It isn't limited by things that Vulkan can help with, and they only used a few of its features. And yet, despite that, they were still very happy with it. When not a lot was going on, performance on Vulkan actually went down. But here's the important bit: during battles, Vulkan performed the best. In other words, when the game needs performance the most, Vulkan does the best. This means that it'll make games run smoother and more consistently, and with better minimum frame rates. He says this latency reduction is important for esports games, and that their Vulkan support is only going to get better. In conclusion, Valve loves Vulkan, and I'd be very surprised if this is the last we hear of it from them. And as if they need more reason to add it to CSGO, Rainbow Six Siege got Vulkan support last month, and has improved frame rates for at least a few of the people who have tested it. The next thing I'd like would be new anti-aliasing methods. CSGO currently has FXAA and MSAA, which are like the oldest methods ever. Fast approximate doesn't slow things down too much, but it's blurry. That's kind of all it does, it blurs things. There are similar but better post-process methods like SMAA, MLAA, TXAA, which can all provide smooth images. But while all these methods run quickly, they often come with their own downsides. Temporal is probably the most popular in modern games. It uses information from earlier frames to help smooth current ones, but this can sometimes lead to weird artifacts and blur behind moving things, which, now I've pointed out, you'll be aware of and annoyed by forevermore. Multi-sample anti-aliasing is a proper anti-aliasing method that adds extra detail to the image, but this comes at the expense of frame rate. 2x MSAA uses 2 samples per pixel, 4 uses 4, and so on. But it only works on some items, so fences and bushes won't always benefit from this. Its bigger brother is super sample anti-aliasing, which literally renders the game at a higher resolution and then crushes it down. This results in excellent visual quality, but it slows it down a lot because it's like running the game at a much higher resolution. 4x super sampling at 1080p would be like gaming at 4K, for example. But maybe there's a way of getting better anti-aliasing and better frame rates. Checkerboard rendering. The Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro use this to reach 4K resolutions. They're not really 4K, they simply render every other pixel, making a checkerboard effect, and then they fill in the rest with what they think would look right. The result might not be as good as proper 4K, but it's a lot better than the number of pixels it's rendering should look. Plus, it adds some degree of anti-aliasing to the result as well. The beauty of this approach is the possibilities it enables. You could game smoothly at higher resolutions than before, you can game at the same frame rate as before but with better anti-aliasing, or you could game at the same resolution but faster than before. I was a bit jealous that consoles had this for a while, but the PC now has a similar feature, Nvidia's DLSS. I've been tracking it, and it is improving. In its latest iterations it's actually very impressive and bodes well for the future. Of course, it would be great if it could be used by everybody, and not just Nvidia users. Variable rate shading is a similar technology in that it bunches groups of pixels together as though they're one. And this can also improve frame rates with near unnoticeable degradation to visual clarity. And Valve already use a reconstruction filter around the edges of your vision in VR. It assumes you won't be looking here, so it can get away with a lower resolution than in the centre of your vision. This improved performance by 5 to 15% on their VR level, claiming it almost always led to big savings on low-end GPUs. In other words, it helped to give higher frame rates to those who needed it the most. Sounds great for those struggling by on CSGO. Forget about frame rates now. What about graphical improvements? I think it would be nice to have high resolution gun textures. Some of them already look sharp, like the P250, but on the bigger weapons the texture resolution loses some of its clarity. The worst offender is the AUG, which, with some finishes, looks like something from the early 2000s. The problem is that it uses the same size texture as a smaller gun, so must stretch it more. I think they should at least quadruple the resolution on guns like this to make them something that you could be proud of owning. I'd also like to see higher shadow settings. When I look at the level, the clarity is fine. In fact, it's too good. More on that in a bit. But when I look at my gun model, the pixelation is obvious, and I wish there was a way of reducing that effect. I think that for people who care, or for those who just want to showcase their gun skins, there should be an ultra high shadow quality setting to smooth out the shadows on your weapon models. Meanwhile, the levels themselves have shadows which are too sharp. Sharp shadows are cast by small light sources. But the sun is not small. It appears in the sky as a sizable circle, and should thus cast shadows which get increasingly blurry the further away from the object that it's casting them. Funnily enough, this is something that older versions of Counter-Strike did better than CSGO. Or at least would have, had the shadows been baked at a high enough quality to show it, but then file size was the problem with this approach in the first place. So while I think that the move to real-time shadows is a considerable improvement in most regards, the older baked-in methods had the potential to more accurately simulate reality in this regard. Just to show it's possible to be done in real time, here's an example from Red Dead Redemption 2. Note how the edges of this post's shadow get blurrier towards the top, even if for some reason the cables don't. Bang. I'm hoping that this is one aspect that Source 2 will improve upon, and if it is, I'd like to see it ported back to CSGO. Thank you. While I don't want ray tracing, I still think the reflections could be improved by adding parallaxing to the cube maps. Right now, no matter where you are in a room, the reflections on your gun will remain fixed to the centre of the area, but parallaxed cube maps will imitate the shape of a boxy room, appearing to move about the room as you do. In a best case scenario, the result can look similar to ray tracing, and in a worst case, well, let's not go there. The beauty is, parallaxing can be added to cube maps without much of a performance impact at all, and many modern games support it. Even this Starscape features it, and this was added to CSGO just a few months ago. It seems like Valve are getting there, one step at a time. CSGO's smoke grenades could also do with an overhaul, for gameplay reasons. They've had a few changes and updates to try and fix problems with them, but some remain, and it's horrible to see them so obviously sticking through walls that they shouldn't be sticking through. I propose Valve scrap the current ones and design them from the ground up to provide more consistent cover on all graphic settings, and maybe to figure out a way of stopping them from passing through thin walls. I don't expect real-time smoke physics, because that would be extremely graphically demanding, but you can check out how awesome that would look in examples such as these. Look at how, when it reaches the wall, it bounces off. And lastly, I'd like to see the AWP obey the laws of physics. Right now you can approach pretty much any surface made of a displacement and make it disappear into the wall. It's not hard. It's frustratingly easy. I discovered like 4 new spots in the space of about 30 seconds here. It only seems to happen with the AWP, and I'm sure a tiny adjustment to the model's center point would fix this. Please Valve, stop the AWP from disappearing through a wormhole without trace. Only VPNs should allow you to do that. Anyway, these suggested changes may not be as cool looking as ray tracing, but I think they're more relevant to CSGO. What would you like to see? Subscribe to find out, maybe.